Hello, friends. So happy to have you here with me today at Radical Joy. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time with me, well, I'm glad you're here. Each week I'm here with you talking to myself about things that weigh on my mind and heart, hoping if you're dealing with something similar, we can adjust both our perspectives as you listen. Hey, if you're struggling with something that needs immediate attention, please know that help is available. Just dial 988 nationwide in the U.S. to reach the Mental Health and Suicide Crisis Hotline. All of us here at CLW Studios believe that mental health is a vital part of our well-being. The more people I meet and the more places I go, the more I realize how important it is to make people aware of the fact that there is no shame in enjoying the parts of your life that are incredible. It's time for some radical joy. And this week, the three fingers pointing back at me are for failing spectacularly. Now, here's my thought on the thing just to get right out the gate. I don't love being wrong. I don't like failing. I don't enjoy anything that I'm not just absolutely spectacular at on first try all the way through. I don't know if that's from being an only child. I don't know if that's from being a people pleaser, part of the gifted program when I was in school. Couldn't tell you. Now, these aren't things I'm ticking off to be like, hey, look at me. This is just, there are studies and there's history behind people who fall into those demographics that say, well, yeah, failure is not your favorite. And I am so on that bus, okay? Just so we're clear. I don't love it. I don't love it on its surface because just the thought of it, whenever you're used to getting all A's on a report card from a million years ago, these kind of things. Now, I know this story doesn't necessarily ring true for everyone, and that's fine. I'm just giving you my experience, so hopefully you can tweak it and sort of like shift it around your own experience to be helpful to you with hopefully very little effort. The word fail was awful. First and foremost, you got a letter for it on your report card if you did it. F for failure. And I think that we put a lot of emphasis on the fact that it is not an A for outstanding academic achievement or whatever. It's the only letter in the grading system that actually is acronymical. Is that a word? It stands for something. F for a fail, for a failing grade. Everything else is just like, first, second, third, fourth. And that carries some weight, especially to a young, impressionable kid who just desperately seeks the acceptance and the praise of those around him, especially someone who's in a position of authority or a position of instruction. Okay, great. Now, we know that as we grow older, there are certain things that we cling to and continue to foster and nurture in our own personalities and ways of doing things. And we also acknowledge the things in there that are not useful, that are actually more harmful than helpful. And we do our very best to sort of move past those kinds of things. And this is one of those ideas that I want to put in our mind to do exactly that with on a daily basis until we move past it. Failure is a wonderful teacher. Okay? I want to make sure that I get that in and loudly and plainly and slowly. Failure is an outstanding instructor. I have learned so much more, so many more valuable lessons from falling flat on my face, square on my ass, than the things that I did well on the first shot. Okay? Speaking of these kind of things, examples are always helpful, not to mention wildly entertaining. We were learning a show when I worked with Royal Caribbean. It was so fun. It was called Jackpot. And I opened the whole show. I come out there in like this vintage Vegas costume, and I get to sing the song. And then I like give the audience a come on, and I charge back between the curtain. And I run off stage while here come all the beautiful showgirls in their feathers and their sequins. Delicious. The day we're supposed to run this show for the rest of everyone that's in the complex learning their shows for the Royal Caribbean Fleet, it is pouring rain outside. I mean, it is coming down cats and dogs, which is, pretty much par for the course for an afternoon in Florida. It happens. It comes down like it pelts everything with raindrops for about half an hour around 3 p.m. Well, pretty much exactly the time we were supposed to do our office run. For whatever reason, I had to run out in the parking lot to get something. I left something in the car, whatever it was, and I just had to charge through all of this pouring rain to get whatever it was because it was crucial to the success of this run for me. I get back in and I try to dry off as best I can, not realizing that my shoes are still pretty slippery from the rain that's still on the soles of them. And I'm out there and the music starts and I'm out there and I'm singing my song and I'm feeling my oats and da 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 da. I give him the come on gesture. I finish it and I turn on my heel to run upstage through the curtain and I fell flat on my ass. And I mean, I fell so hard people thought it was part of the program. The only people in the room that knew it wasn't were people who either taught the show or had done the show before, because I had half the people like, was that intentional? Ladies and gentlemen, please be assured it was not. So, yeah, and that was the top of the show. That's literally in the first 60 seconds of the whole situation, okay? Which means that I still have to go on and do the rest of this show for about 45, 50 minutes. Awesome. Awesome. What'd you learn from it, Bullard? Well, first and foremost, make sure if you're going to be doing something like that, you either change your shoes before you go out or you find another pair of shoes to wear to the performance so you don't bust your butt again. Also, doing that is not the end of the world. Honestly, I think that was the more important part. I have just crashed and burned in my mind at the moment in front of literally hundreds of my peers and colleagues. And there's always that little bit of competition to see who sings what better and who does what more enjoyably, blah, 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 blah. And I just splattered in front of all of these people. Okay. And now there's no time to mourn. There's no time to worry about any of that kind of stuff. The only thing there is continue with the show. It must go on. And it did. And it was wonderful. And I had a blast. The show's great. I loved it. It was one of my favorite shows that I've ever done with the fleet. And that's saying something because I've done a lot of shows with Royal Caribbean in the past. We didn't get to do it nearly as much on the ship as I wanted to. I think it was one of my favorites because I'll never forget that moment in the office run that I just absolutely bit it and lived to tell the tale. And now I can laugh about it. And I had to keep going because you can't do the show without me. I mean, you could, but it's much, much easier if the boy one singer stays, even though he's embarrassed himself in the first minute of performance. That being said, failing is not the end of the world. Like so few situations we find ourselves in are going to be the thing that is the last thing that you do before they shuffle off the mortal coil, you know? Yes, it is mortifying at the moment. You'd probably rather crawl into a hole than have to face the rest of your workday after something like that. Sometimes that just isn't, it's not, that's not in the program. That's not what happens. You can't do it. And that was probably the best lesson I could have pulled away from something like that. We still had a great show, still gave a great run. A lot of people laughed about it afterwards. Yes, I was mildly embarrassed. The more I had to do to move past that, the less embarrassing it became. You're like, I got to shake this off because I've still got 47 other songs to sing before we get to do our bow. Great. That's exactly the kind of energy I want to take into everything I do from here on out. I want to go after it with everything I've got in me. If I go to the moon, great, wonderful. That's another something I can throw in my basket of tricks to say, wonderful, this is something that I can do. I will offer this as part of the package that comes with James Bullard. If you want to bring him on for your project, great. Another very important part in this, and I think I want to add it to my resume now that I'm talking about it with all of you, is the ability to fail spectacularly and carry on. I think that we put a big stigma on failure. I think that it takes a lot of different looks. And I think a lot of people are worried about it. And I want to encourage us to move away from that idea. I think that the bigger the risk you take, the bigger the reward that waits on the other side of it. Even if you do fail at whatever you're trying right now, the skills you add to your set moving forward are so valuable. And I don't want to talk to every industry because I'm not really part of corporate America or any of that kind of stuff anymore. Something where I think mediocrity plays a very big role because people don't necessarily want to take the big risk because their consequences may be a lot heftier than they can afford. And I get that. And I want to pay respect to that as well. What I want to say is, especially if you're an artist, if you're a creator, if you consider yourself to be a creative spirit, something like that does not carry the same weight. Your livelihood or your success or failure as a provider, as a member of your familial unit, probably won't rely on that as heavily. Not to say that you couldn't, not to say that you might not do really, really well by taking those kinds of risks in your professional life. What I want to say is, I am personally exhausted with mediocrity. I find it tedious and upsetting, and I find it very, very difficult to kind of keep my buoyancy at that level. For whatever reason, this puts a picture in my mind. I love to go scuba diving. I have my PADI certification. I've had it for years and years, and I have a difficult time staying buoyant closer to the bottom of our dive site. Meaning, you have to sort of adjust your weight and adjust your CBD to make sure that you stay close to the bottom. CBD, is that right? Or is that? I think that's right. I don't know. Either way, it's a 3-letter acronym. I don't do well with acronyms. I don't. My buddy Beach, he's really good with acronyms, and he'll throw me something like that. It's like, I can't do these. I hate them. If you can't say the word, don't bother with this line of conversation. This topic is annoying. Either way, I digress. In order to keep buoyancy close to the bottom of your dive site, you have to strike a very precarious balance. And I don't. Well, I float. Now, that is a very literal translation of this metaphor that I'm trying to get across. I consider the mediocrity that a lot of people try to maintain just because it's safer to be very tiresome. And that, for me, translated into that idea that I don't do well trying to float near the bottom because that's not how I'm made. Whether it's the chunk that I carry around with me or the fact that I take enormous gulping breaths of oxygen because I'm a singer, whatever it is, trying to float close to the bottom ain't my bag. And I need to be okay with that. I need to acknowledge that. And I think that's part of what today's lesson is going to help me do. Also, I want to take into the fact that whenever you can't keep your buoyancy at the bottom, that is considered to be a fail in the diving world, because you don't want to get closer to the top. You want to make sure you maintain a certain depth. Otherwise, it can be damaging. It can be very dangerous. You could, depending on how deep you're diving, you could develop the bends. You could get a serious problem whenever you float to the top. So you have to be super careful with something like that. There's a reason why you have to stay at a certain depth for a certain amount of time and rise slowly. Now that I'm talking about this, it makes sense that in life we want to do the same sort of thing. I think that gradual is a wonderful thing because at every step along the way that we continue to rise, that we continue to build altitude and or speed or momentum, it's good to be able to know what it is you did to get there, know how much effort it takes to maintain that, and to make plans and steps in order to continue to exceed, grow, and evolve. Wonderful. In order to get to these heights, sometimes we have to take risks and chances that can also end in quote unquote failure. Okay. When we do that, what does it look like? What are the consequences? What are the problems that come from it? I am willing to bet that some of us don't even think about the consequences. What we do is we anticipate the stick instead of thinking about the actual real world outcomes whenever we take these grand leaps into growth. Okay, great. So if I make this jump and I miss Okay, another picture comes to mind. I am jumping from one side of a chasm to the other. And I say chasm, it's not that big a deal. Like there is a drop. Yes, there's something that, below you. But you take a look at that jump, and you're like, that would not take a lot of effort. Plus, there's something on the other side that I can grab onto to steady myself when I arrive. It's probably like a 4 foot distance. So I don't even need that much running jump space. I can literally just put a little push behind it, land on the other side, grab the stump, make sure everything's cool, get my footing, and keep trucking. Wonderful. There are other jumps that will be farther apart. They will not have the same depth of landing space. They will not have the same tree or vine or shrub to grab whenever you land on the other side. Okay. So what does that mean? What's that going to look like? If I take this chance and the quote unquote fail happens, how bad's the fall? How bad's that going to hurt when I hit the ground below? Is it worth it for whatever is on the other side of this hole I'm jumping? Is the jump the lesson? What if there isn't anything on the other side of this? What if I just jump to prove to myself that I can still jump? There are so many questions that we can ask ourselves that continue to inform this decision that we have to make. And I love that because it's just, I want to keep asking questions. Okay. I want to keep what ifing literally all of the things because if you're fine with where you are, that's great. I don't want to necessarily harsh it. What I want to do is continue to encourage myself and anyone listening to continue to grow. I get so frustrated thinking that we reach a point where we've made enough money or we've done enough this or we've done enough that. And like, okay, so what does that mean? What's going on from here? Like enough. All right. So what more? And it's a little frustrating for me because I can't help thinking like, okay, we could do more, we could do better, or we could continue to at least ask. And I think I think it's worth it. I just get cranky, okay? And I can acknowledge it. I absolutely can. I look around and I see people and I think to myself, where did they lose the dream? And I really don't want this to sound judgmental, even though it absolutely could go that way. That is not my intention in the least. What dreams did they have? Are they still following them? Which dreams did they have to lay to the side and find a new dream? Did they find a new dream? Are they still going after the old dream? There's so many questions and something like that, but you see some people and just the things that they do, the way they live their lives makes me think, okay, so what did they want to do when they were 11? When the whole world was in front of them, when everything was still, everyone is kind, everyone's trying to help you, these kinds of things. What did that look like? At what point did they start hugging with their whole body and start hugging from the side? Those kind of things, I don't know. Maybe I put too much thought into it. Maybe it's one of those things where maybe that's not a question that people want to answer. That's a difficult question to answer. I think a lot of people don't think about those things, don't ask those kinds of questions because the answer is not always wonderful. Nobody likes to think they gave up on their dreams, right? Everyone likes to think that they're still trucking toward whatever it is that is their goal, their life's purpose, their why, to quote Simon Sinek. And I don't think enough people check in with themselves because maybe they just don't have the time for it. Maybe they have a million other things pulling on their attention and their time. And so they can't really check in to see that. Maybe they don't have a supportive partner to encourage them to do those kinds of things. Maybe they have just way too much to do and worry about that kind of thing just doesn't really get brought up anymore. Okay. All right. So how do we get back to it? How do we pick something like that? I saw something Oprah Winfrey said on the internet a little while ago. She was just like, a lot of people don't know what they want. They just don't know what it is that they want. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. I think she's right. I think a lot of people do what other people had in mind for them, plans for them, not knowing that they could do those things and still have dreams that they could chase and achieve, that they could have accomplishments in their life that they wanted to reach, but just didn't necessarily know how to go about it. Or they don't make consistent steps daily in order to achieve it. Okay. Now, see, these are things that we can absolutely admit. They're not comfortable to say, especially in the company of strangers. It's still something that we can work toward and ask the question so that we can get closer to answering them. Whenever we know the what it is we want to achieve, we start making our steps. And occasionally, sometimes those are going to be literal just baby steps. Okay, I did this, this, and this today. Great, wonderful. Other days you can, have some time or some motivation to really go after it. Now you cover some ground and today was great. And then there are days whenever you will be forced to make a giant leap in the direction of your dream. And maybe you'll land on that ledge with sure footing. And maybe you'll have one toe slip off the back. And the next thing you know, your chin's coming down hard on that. And you fly backwards into the thing and you've got to crawl tooth and nail up the side of the chasm that you just jumped from and find another day to try again. And you know what? That's okay too. That's the thing. It's okay. It hurts. Well, what does it hurt? Well, what do you got? It hurts your pride. Sometimes it hurts your body. Sometimes it does. I have personally fitness goals that I want to achieve. And every year I move away from 21, that gets harder and harder. Now, I'll be honest, I am a better athlete now in my 40s than I ever was at 20, which I think is wildly unfair and annoying as hell. I didn't put myself to the athletic paces until I was much older. CrossFit, y'all. Say what you want about it. Make fun of all the things that we do in that. Let me tell you something that will connect your brain and body. It will hurt like a monster. Jeez. And you will fail and you will know that you have failed spectacularly because it will hurt immediately. It will also hurt 3 days later or maybe weeks later as you heal. It will also provide a benefit. Now, I'm not trying to push anybody towards CrossFit. I'm just here to tell you that it helped me, and it drives home this idea of failure spectacularly. I have fallen off the side of so many jump boxes, it is embarrassing. My shins still have dents in them from trying to make a box jump and missing. And I mean not just missing. I'm talking about jumping up that thing, missing with toes and scraping down both shins, so it's like I'm bleeding all over God's creation. I'm talking about once or twice where I tried to jump over the box and went ass over tea kettle and ate rubber matting. And I still got a pretty face. I still got strong legs. But boy, that hurt. I did not love it. The benefit from that exertion continues to follow me to this day. I have it in my bag of tricks. For whatever reason, something falls out of the medicine cabinet. I can catch it without even watching before it hits the counter and shatters or spills. What the deuce? What do I need that now for? And these failures are continuing to build on this. It's a setback. It's a step back. Yes, it is. You've been there before. The steps that lead you back to where you failed are easily retraced. You can get back there in no time. And now you know what you did wrong. I need more momentum behind that. I need to come with this in hand to make sure that doesn't happen again because I did not like it. And now I know. And that is valuable. It's crucial. And this may be a stumbling block that just needs a couple of tries. It may be the mountain that requires months or years of practice and trial and error before you overcome it. And overcome it you will. If it becomes one of those things where it's literally the bane of your existence, perhaps we should try a way around instead of over or through. Great. Or maybe we adjust our journey so that that doesn't necessarily stand in our way any longer. Cool. That's fine. I'm not getting aggressive. What I'm saying is sometimes we need just a little bit of a shake to get out of a stasis, out of a treading water moment. Sometimes you need somebody to reach into the water and grab you by your shoulders and pull you out of that into the boat so you can see where it is you're going. Treading water is not about movement, it's about keeping your head above water. We're better than that. We can do more than that. It's not just that we're keeping our head above water. Sometimes you need to rest, and maybe that's the best way to do that. Sometimes you take a minute to rest and you get stuck in one spot and you continue to paddle. What you don't realize is that you're still expending energy. So my question is this: do you want to continue expending that energy to stay where you are, or do you want to move forward? This is a question. It's not a push. It's not a shove in any sort of answering scenario. I just want to know. And whenever I say that, I want you to know. I want you to ask yourself that question. And if you can't answer right away, great. If you can't answer right away, pause on that. Think on that for just a hot second. I answered that very quickly. Why? Because I know I want to move forward, because I know I want to stay here for another moment, because I've got a little bit more learning in this spot before I continue to move forward. Am I here treading water here because I'm just afraid to move forward, or is this kind of a comfy spot and I don't necessarily want to leave from it just yet? All these are valid answers, okay? All valid, all of them. The thing that I want to say is, if you're made for better and you know you are, and you find yourself in a place where you're treading water, understand failure is not the end of the world. Failure is a wonderful lesson. And chances are, when you move yourself toward what you were made to do, there will be help along the way to make sure that that failure isn't fatal, because it's not. So many times it's not. And when it happens, because it's not an if, when this happens, more questions. Well, gee, I wonder why that happened. Why did that happen? What did I learn? What hurts? What, where did I grow? In what part of my life did something become more valuable? Every time you splatter, and I hope it's often, pardon me for saying it, I hope it's often. I hope you will take that moment to lick wounds, and while you do that, look around and see what good came of it. There's always something on the other side of it. Yes, 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 you're bleeding, blah, blah, blah. What did you learn? What came of this? Don't lose the lesson just because you're bleeding. Seek attention. And while you're in the waiting room, figure out what it is that you gained from the experience, because that's always the way it goes. That is always the way it goes, okay? I know this from personal experience, and I feel myself lucky in a way that I have failed so spectacularly in so many things. You know, you do it. What's a little embarrassment? Okay, ha ha ha, great. There are other people who get permission from you and your failures because you were ballsy enough to try. Do it. Oh my God. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody took chances like that, right? Wouldn't it be great if we could all come from a place of understanding? Been there. Well done. Most people don't even get up off their couch. You went after it. You crashed spectacularly. And now we're going to put a band-aid on it. We're going to kiss that boo-boo, and we're going to talk about what it is you learned from this. And I'm going to put my arm around your shoulders and be like, well done, friend. That was spectacular. The clatter you made on that ugly ass landing will be spoken of in legend. What'd you learn? How'd we grow? How much easier is this going to be next time? Are you going to be timid about it next time because of what happened this time? Or are you going to learn more and make sure you write it down and take the lesson so that next time you are better prepared, stronger to make the jump, more fearless in the launch? That's a thing too. You got to launch with all of your guts to do it. When you land on the other side, great. I dated this amazing woman back in the day in Royal Caribbean, ice skater. And God love her, she would launch herself with wild abandon. But she was very, very tentative about her landing, which meant that a lot of times she would land on her rear, on her fantastic rear, her muscular, shapely, delightful rear. Great. Okay, super. After the shows, she'd be really bent out of shape about it. And I will never forget one time I called her. I said, "Baby, you launched yourself so well. You did not enter into that scared. And though you did not land perfectly, I will always remember and be so excited that you ran into it so bravely." And though she had some pretty spectacular bruises on that magnificent rear end, she never forgot the fact that what I praised her about was the launch. Do not be afraid to launch. Oh, man, I love the time we get to spend together. It's only about half an hour every week, but geez Louise, it helps me tremendously. I see something in my life that I need to talk about, and sometimes I don't have somebody really close that I can speak about it. Like, we interrupt each other. A conversation is wonderful because we try to uh, we try to relate. We try to share similar experiences so other people know that we can empathize with where they're coming from. And sometimes you just need somebody to sit there and soak it up. I just need to talk at somebody. I need them to understand what it is I'm saying and just sit there quietly. And bless your hearts, that's who you are for me whenever I get to sit down and talk about something like this, because sometimes it just has to be talked about. And then once I get it off my chest, I understand the things that are important. I understand the things that are just me blowing off steam and getting rid of breath. And then I can really get to the crux of something and converse about that with someone that I think is knowledgeable and someone I can trust with the situation. I hope we all have somebody like that in our lives. I'm lucky to have several somebodies like that in mine. So, yeah, this time we get to spend together helps me sort of streamline what it is that needs attention from my nearest and dearest so that we can all be efficient. Not that you always have to be, but people are busy. And then that way I can get to the meat of it more quickly and I don't have to worry about sort of fluffing about. I can just get right to the crux and we can talk about it. We can hug and be on our way. And I'll feel great. Hopefully this is what that is for you. If this is your first episode, welcome. I am so happy you're here. We here at CLW Studios try so hard to put out good work that is helpful and useful. If this is not your first episode, welcome back. Thank you so much for the pleasure of your return presence. We're grateful that something here warrants your return. If you are here for a second time, or if this is your first episode and you've really enjoyed it, hey, please share us with your friends and colleagues and loved ones. We would love to be a help to others if that's what we are to you. If you're the kind of person who loves to write a review, wonderful. Please do so. Write us a 5-star review on whichever platform where you're listening. Send us a screenshot. We would love to send you a little bit of swag from us here at Radical Joy. More than likely, it's going to be a sticker. It's going to have my face on it. And you're going to put it on your water bottle, or you're going to put it on your journal, your laptop, wherever it is you put a sticker. The adhesive on the back is remarkably strong. So, yeah, I can definitely attest to that. And then that way it's a reminder, and it's also something where you can support us here at Radical Joy because your support means so much. And that is how we continue to do the work that we do here at Radical Joy. As always, thank you so much for listening, and please never, ever forget, we love y'all. Thank you for taking time to share a moment of joy and hope with me. We're so grateful you're here. If this is your first time, take a moment to check out our archive. See if there's something else in there that fires you up, rekindles the joy in you. Hey, spread the word if you got something out of being with us today. We welcome your thoughts and suggestions. Now, I rarely run out of things to talk about, but if there's something I haven't covered that's on your mind or heart, I want to hear from you. To learn more about me and CLW Studios, follow the links in the show notes. Hey, don't forget, when you leave Radical Joy a review, be sure to send us a screenshot. We'll send you some kick-ass swag to show our gratitude. I am not a therapist or a medical professional. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please call 988 to reach the National Crisis Lifeline. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on this podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of James or CLW Studios. Please consult with your therapist or seek one in your area if you're experiencing mental health symptoms. Everything in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Have a great one, and we will see you next week for another dose of Radical Joy. Love y'all.